Hello and welcome to the Annie Altman Show, the podcast, season 5. Welcome to the 9th episode in the series on change. Today, I'm so fortunate to be here with Melissa Dagodag, who is a lawyer and the person who I'm also very fortunate to have had help with the copywriting, trademarking process and my first experience going through it. And so, of course, I invited her on the podcast, and here we are virtually recording. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for bringing your background of calmness here, of this photo that you took for people watching on YouTube.
Yeah, it's my photo, like I said, from Waitomo Bay in New Zealand.
So I would love for you to share a little bit about you, however you would like to introduce you to the podcast world, to talk about maybe when you got into law and the types of trademarking and being in LA and
Sure,
all there.
sure, no problem. So I became an attorney essentially who practices with creative people, and I call myself the attorney for creative types. And I was into that area of the law because when I was an undergraduate at Stanford University, I had started my own product design and manufacturing company. And I found that there were so many issues not being a lawyer that I faced that I tackled on my own before I became a lawyer. But I also have other creative friends who are actors and writers and fine artists and photographers. And I wanted to be able to help those types of people and offer reasonable rates. So that really led me to go to law school. My experiences as a product designer, and I also am a digital photographer and a poet. And I have so many friends who are creative. I wanted to be able to offer services to them at a reasonable price and also to protect my own work and to look out for my own interests and needs as a creative person.
I love that you do both and see both sides of the whole process and of learning about the process, and also all of that sort of inner artist talk that says, well, why would I want to protect this, or what does protecting mean, or how do I interact with both all of these feeling based and emotional artistic things, and also this, okay, I'm a human navigating this reality, and there's such a thing as trademark law, and things can go in these different ways, and how do I
Yeah,
navigate?
well, I appreciate that. I'm really lucky because I practice in an area that I enjoy, and I think it's one of the most interesting areas. So, intellectual property involves trademarks and copyrights. It also involves patents, but I don't practice patent law. But because it involves trademarks and copyrights by its very nature, I'm working with very interesting people who are creating all kinds of intellectual property, whether it's songs or architectural works or just brand names for podcasts like yours.
And when did you, so you were already on your artistic journey, and then you basically, it sounds like you were like, oh, how can I do all these steps I'm having to figure out and learn and help other people with those steps too?
Yeah, I just realized when I was a product designer, when I was an undergrad at Stanford for my own company, that there were people who were copying our products and I wanted to do something. So because that happened is when I said, I should really get to know this law stuff so I can help myself and help all my friends who are creative.
Mm, it's so real. The biggest learnings coming from the experience of it, of which that brings up to me so many questions about why, like, my all of my sort of philosophical lights about like what humanity, like what the fuck are we doing here, and ways of how it becomes, it's accepting the reality to say we do need these systems because here's behaviors and things that have happened, and like we have money as a system and all of these things, and so people have motivations to do things maybe they wouldn't otherwise, or we need protections we maybe wouldn't otherwise, or also then with things like intellectual property, how do you have
Well,
protection over some things that are so.
Well, copyright law, most of American law comes from the UK and essentially has a long, long past. And really, the idea in American copyright law, again, that comes from British law, is to protect and preserve creative works and make it so that people can profit off their creative works so that there is a drive or and impetus and motivation for people to continue to create creative works. So in the US Constitution, believe it or not, is where protection for copyrights comes from. So it has quite a rich and solid past to protect creative works. And again, it's because our country has a vested interest in having people put out different, software, artwork, to make new buildings, to choreograph, ballets, everything that's done by creative people. And thank goodness we have a way to protect it.
True, and to give some structure to these creative projects or different ideas or things that help advance humans as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
It's cool too that you figured out, and I'm sure still navigating, how to have time for your own poetry and your own creative projects, will also the creativity too of learning about law and learning about like how this thing goes seems like a puzzle in some ways.
Yeah, I think for me, luckily, I've always thought learning was magical. So I grew up in Southern California in Beverly Hills, and always took every, gifted and talented education class and AP, and then got a scholarship to Stanford. And part of that is because I really love learning. Like, I just love learning new things, and that's what's so great. That's how I live my life every day. I try to learn new things and stimulate different areas of my brain, and that's how I'm able to write poetry and songs and take photos. I'm actually working on a children's book right now. And I do all these things just to keep my brain active and to keep me engaged and interested. And when you're engaged and interested, it also makes your actual work that you do, I think, that much better, because your brain is firing on all cylinders.
I relate to that, and then I'm also curious about the part of rest and play and how to both honor both hemispheres of the brain, which I hear you doing, and then also the downtime, the rest, the like, wow, there's all of this change and all this stimulation, and I'm very much asking for myself in my own humaning practice of, okay, well, what about the pause? Like, how do I build in a structure for that part of this?
Well, I think especially right now, that's important during the time of the pandemic. So I have done a couple things which I've shared with people that I find really valuable to build in the structure of a pause in the day. So in the morning, my husband and I usually meditate together, and then it can be really short, and there are wonderful different meditations you can find on SoundCloud. And in fact, one of my favorite meditation teachers named Lisa Kring, K-R-I-N-G, offers her meditations on SoundCloud, and she has one called Mountain Meditation. That's my absolute favorite meditation. I think it's about 15 minutes long or so. But I built in meditation into my day, and then every day at sunset, my husband and I go onto the balcony and we have some kind of toast to one another at sunset, and just to take a pause, since both of us are working. He's a professor of mathematics and is teaching his classes remotely by Zoom. And I just, of course, working all day with my computer and on the phone, handling contracts. So the pause to take a look in the distance and see the sun setting above the water is a very nice pause to take.
Mm-hmm. And that's so nice to have those two rituals together, and someone to be able to support each other in putting the computer down, putting the things down, looking at the sky.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. That's part of, I feel like, to get into the change theme. Sometimes I feel like when things are going so fast and all the cylinders, what is on both sides, harmful, helpful, neither, about it is that sometimes then I don't notice the changes as much until I take that pause, or until I step back and look at it. It's like when people's hair grows longer, people get taller, and
Yeah.
you it differently based on, like, if you're seeing someone every day, or you stop and it's for longer.
Yeah, I think that when we talk about change, it really is valuable to talk about the dichotomy of change that you can't control, change that just happens to you, and then there's change that you might strive to make happen, which can be very tricky. When you're trying to make something happen, it can lead to issues of disappointment or resentment, things like that, if you can't make them happen. But the first type of change, where things just happen to you, I will give you an example of something I've learned about change as I've grown older, and that is some things change, of course, for the better, you hope. Sometimes changes for the worse. But I'll give you an example, and that is I had a period of time in my life for some reason where I had a physical ailment that's called neuropathy, and it's since gone away, but it's kind of like pins and needles in various parts of your body. It does not feel pleasant at all, and it can also feel like a severe pinching or something. And nobody had any explanation of why this happened. But when I went through this unexpected change of having this weird disorder, I remember at the time I used to love to take hot baths because I exercise a ton and I play beach volleyball usually and tennis. And I would come from the beach and I would take a hot salt bath and relax. And I realized once I had this condition that luckily has since gone away, that I couldn't take those hot baths anymore. So that really stands out in my mind as the type of change where something that you love, that you rely on, for me, I'm talking about a hot bath, can become something that you either, it's a very strong word, you either hate it or you just can't even enjoy it anymore, at the very least.
Because of the neuropathy, or I'm not following.
Yeah, it just made it worse. It just made the pain worse.
Whoa.
Kind of like, oh my God, this thing that I love has turned into something I hate. I mean, another way to think of it is like someone who eats ice cream every day and then they realize, oh, now I'm lactose intolerant. I can't have ice cream. It's just, so change it can truly take away some of the things we most enjoy, and being able to accept that and sort of roll with it is a graceful maneuver that's not easy to come by until you really had experience with it, I think. So because especially when it's something that you love that's just taken away from you. And so as I said, that ailment that I had went away, thank goodness. I don't have any problem with that, so I can take all the hot baths I want. But it really, for me, marked something in my mind that I will never forget. Is just don't forget that everything that you love today that might seem like heaven on earth to you could be gone tomorrow. And it really could. And that you have to, if you want to live and even thrive and have a good life, you have to be able to accept that and continue on with your life. And of course, that's so easy to say, accept it and continue on. But there are many ways to cope with that. But it's not easy to bring about that real acceptance.
I feel that. And also like you said, easier said than done of talking about it, knowing it intellectually versus feeling it and really physically accepting, like for what you were talking about of, wow, this feels really different to my body than it did before. And I'm not going to keep doing something that feels bad in my body because it's something I've been doing before. So am I going to accept the reality of this situation?
Yeah, I also remember I've been watching that Some Good News with John Krasinski. I don't know if you watched it.
Yeah,
I remember it's good, and I'm glad he sold it, I think, to NBC. But it was cute when it was his own.
You were like, how's he doing the property?
I love that it was his own kind of hokey, funny thing at his house with his kids' drawings in it. So hopefully it'll stay that way. But I just remember Oprah talking on it on his show also, and saying that she wanted to get a news gig, I think, and step up her position where she was working early in her career, and basically auditioned, and they said no, absolutely not. And they basically sent her on her way, and she realized later that she never would have become the person she became, this superstar, mega wealthy, influential person she is, if that hadn't happened. So another part of me has learned, it's sort of that one door closes and another opens up, that you might not see it right away, right? But when that happens, if it's a change that you can't control and you can learn to accept it, part of the acceptance for me that makes it easier is that another door will open up. And it may be today, it might be a year from now, but it's not, you won't suffer the loss and the feelings of loss, I think, as much if you have some techniques to deal with them.
And remember that. And for me, the word coming to mind is trust. To trust that another door opens is, at least in my navigating of it, how to say, okay, well, we've been in a situation before and another door's open. So that can happen again here.
Yeah. And it really does. I find it kind of amazing how that works.
Do you feel like you've trusted in that more throughout your life, or less, or it kind of goes in waves? or also what helps you to remember that?
You know, um, I do trust in things, but make no mistake, I'm this super type A personality, and I'm always like, boom, 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 boom. I've got to get things done. I have lists. I need to cross things off the list. I'm making things happen, you know? So that's my personality. So when things happen that are beyond my control, you know, especially when I was younger, was a real struggle for me. And I think that's why it made such an impression upon me, that story I told you about, you know, not being able to take a hot bath. So it basically is just expect the unexpected. I once went to a talk by a well-known Buddhist, and of course I don't recall his name. At the time, the person I was dating was Buddhist, and he took me to this talk in Santa Monica. And the sort of guru Buddhist guy said, you know, when someone asked him, what advice do you have for people? You know, what's the best advice you can give people? And he said, if there's one thing I have to say, it's anything can happen at any time. And look at the pandemic, right? Anything can happen at any time. I mean, I certainly never thought this was going to happen. So I think that the idea of just knowing that change will happen and things will be beyond your control, and it's not that you won't feel the pain, whatever kind of suffering it may cause you, but if you can focus on the fact that maybe another door will open up, or the circumstances will pass, and not be what they call in Buddhism attached, you know, not be too attached to any particular outcome, that really does a lot to ease your own suffering and your own anguish. And I think it merits saying that some people get confused about what it means, what non-attachment means, and they think it means you don't care and you're apathetic. And that's not at all the point, and I really don't like it when I come across people who believe that, because it's more about just not being overly concerned with the outcome or the results. You know, it's more about, you can be passionate, because I know I certainly am, and you can be interested and involved, but you just don't want to be overly attached to one outcome or another.
Totally. And that is I'm glad that you brought that up, and I'm also really glad you brought up that dichotomy of change, of what you can control and what you can't, and how to check in with that, to use it to accept, to say,
Yeah, the acceptance is so crucial, but it doesn't mean you don't have the feelings about it, right? Because it's important to feel your feelings no matter what they are.
yeah, which is again part of, in my experience, part of the accepting is accepting the feelings, accepting those human impulses that come up and say, oh, I want to attach to this, I want to control this situation, I want to know it. Like I get so type A in about certain things, or about that list crossing off, and I feel we can all have certain elements of that, and ignoring those or resisting those only makes them stronger. So what you resist persists, and it's just going to keep coming around to.
Yeah, absolutely. Feeling the feelings is so important. I mentioned this meditation that's my favorite meditation, I think by Lisa Kring, and it's called Mountain Meditation. And part of the reason it's my favorite, because I have a very vivid imagination, but you basically shut your eyes and she'll talk you through what I picture in my mind as being myself, like Mount Fuji. And she'll talk you through the different changes of the season, being a mountain. And you're a mountain, and it's going into winter, and there's howling winds, and you know, snowflakes are falling on your eyelashes, and nobody's around, and it's lonely, but you're a mountain, and you still stand steadfast. And then that turns into spring, where there are, you know, animals on the mountain, and rivers start to flow, and there's more activity and life. And so talking you through all the seasons, really the point is that change is going to happen all around you, but you can remain steadfast like a mountain, and you don't react, and you can remain calm like a mountain, and dignified and serene. And I just love that image. It really is meaningful to me.
Yes, me too. In the seasons, to represent cycles of change, and that it is going to keep happening, that it is going to happen around you. And such a metaphor too for grounded and rooted and
Sure.
staying.
It's a beautiful image. I think it's a beautiful image.
Which helps too for that memory of when so much change happens, and when life feels so up in the air, it can be really easy to forget about that option, about, okay, well, what about your inner mountain part, your inner steady part, your whatever is still unchanging here.
Mm-hmm.
I feel it can be easy. I feel like so much of meditation to me is remembering and being like, oh yeah, there's that other option to.
Yep. I think it's kind of retraining your mind. I mean, I think the meditation gives you a place to go to when things happen, like we're talking about unexpected. As if there were like a giant storm or something in front of you. It gives you a place to go to that's a calm place within yourself. And that's so crucial because so many things will happen in our lives that no one else can get us through. It has to be us, you know. I mean, a very basic example would be like if you had to have a surgery or something. You know, I had a benign thyroid tumor at one point 10 or 15 years ago. And I just remember using my meditation like nobody's business, you know, because when I had to get on that gurney and they're going to put me under, I was completely in my, you know, meditative state so that I wasn't fighting it. And I realized, you know, I have to get through this alone. And having that calm place you can go to in your mind really helps. And it doesn't have to be something dramatic like getting through a surgery, but it can just be like the everyday little things that we go through right now, like missing seeing your family or your friends in person, or just for me, I miss playing tennis with my friends and heckling them on the court. But if you have this calm, safe place you can go to in your mind, it really is a haven for all kinds of weather conditions, right?
What got you into that, or what was? I'd be curious to hear more about. Generally, the more someone has practiced these things, the more they also know the other side of things feeling really stormy really frequently, or how to navigate it, or really unexpected freak storms and accidents.
Well, I'm so sure that my story is really common. I think like one of the number one things that probably brings people to meditation or to go see a therapist or a psychoanalyst is a breakup. So at one point I was going through a very bad breakup and it really just rocked me to the core. And someone recommended this program that Insight LA, a in Santa Monica offers. It's called MBSR, which is mindfulness based stress reduction. And I went to this program at a like an acting studio in Hollywood, rented out their space on the weekends for this meditation program. And that's where it started. And I did that, I think, maybe 12 years ago. And then I really want to say, I think about like 17 or 18 years ago, I did Yoga Works teacher training. So had been involved in yoga very seriously for a long time. And then I started to get into meditation more.
And you were like, wow, these tools are really helpful for navigating changes.
Yes, bad breakups.
Yeah. Well, uh, so when I think about changes, so much of it is beginnings and endings and life and death and beginnings and endings of relating and the grieving process. And that is such a common theme for all humans, common story too, to go through grief and loss in some way. And I feel like the closer that connection is, then the bigger the grief is.
Yeah, I think, you know, like we touched on this idea of feeling your feelings. It's so important to get that message out there too, because especially mothers and fathers with little boys in our culture, we've, you know, unfortunately had a pattern of making it not okay for boys to express certain feelings sometimes. And I guess the same thing, of course, is true for girls, but they're different feelings. So just allowing your kids to have that experience of the bad, quote unquote, feelings, whatever they are, anger or despair or sorrow, frustration, is really crucial. And it's crucial for us as adults to allow ourselves to feel those feelings too. Because if you just stuff them down and you just try to continue on like nothing's happening, those feelings will come out one way or another, and they're probably going to come out, you know, projected onto somebody else that you love, and you don't want that to happen. So expressing the feelings as you go through changes, both positive and negative feelings, is really crucial. And all of us right now during the pandemic can do our friends a favor, especially if we have friends who are single and living alone and quarantining or staying safer at home alone, of just reaching out to them, you know, because everybody's going through something. And the ability, this is a known fact by psychologists, just sharing your story with people and your feelings really provides a tremendous amount of healing. And you don't have to be a therapist to be the listener. You just have to be a good listener.
I appreciate you sharing that and underscoring it again. And that's so much of this podcast and the humanity of me reminding myself of these things too, that resisting the feeling is not going to make it go away. And that my favorite metaphor for emotions is the weather, that it's going to keep changing. It's going to be rainy again sometime, and it's going to be sunny again sometime. And I love you bringing up that mountain meditation to say you can still exist in all of these climate conditions.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's too like what we've been taught of what's acceptable expression. Like little boys being taught, oh, you can only express anger, and this is your one emotional choice. You can show nothing or anger. And oh, little girls, you can show all of these emotions and you can't show anger. Here's your choices. And then all of us are here being like, well, wait, I'm a human. I have the whole spectrum of the emotional wheel of things here. And it's almost, to me, it becomes this form of self-gaslighting that I still am unlearning and relearning, of continual learning of how to say, oh, hey, feeling, what's up? I truly accept you, not just in this intellectual whatever. I feel you. There's space for you. You're safe to be here. And also, you're not the one driving the life car here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes our feelings also are a surprise. You know, I remember when I first started meditating, you're maybe become able to hear your thoughts more and they tell you about your feelings. And some of the things that I thought and that I realized I was feeling were quite surprising to me.
I'm really glad you brought that up too, of like for the car metaphor, the feelings maybe you're going to give a direction that you need to drive, or they know where to go, or they know somewhere that needs to be explored, that otherwise you wouldn't get if you're not giving them the voice, if you're not accepting them. Yeah. What kinds of things have come up for you that you were surprised by?
I
That
think,
you feel like sharing?
honestly, I think when I first started meditating, it was really good feelings. Like those were bubbling beneath the surface, I guess, and I hadn't even tuned into them, you know? I think many of us, if we're trying to make positive changes, we might focus on the negative and think, I need to eradicate this one thing and my life will be better if I just get rid of this one thing. And what I realized when I started meditating was I had a lot of like really pleasant, nice thoughts going on. And I was like, wait a minute, I didn't know those were even in there, but it was great, right?
Totally. Well, it's like stopping to take that pause at the end of your night to look at the sunset and saying, oh yeah, this is here. This is always here. And I'm so glad you used the word trying. And I think often of that Yoda, or I feel often that Yoda quote of do or do not, there is no try. And noticing when I go into the patterning of wanting to try and force and do, because then I start forgetting, wow, what about all this pleasant stuff that's already here that you have already done, that you're about to do in this way, that you could be surprised by.
Yeah, yeah, the good kind of surprise, the good kind of surprise, the unexpected one that's positive, which is wonderful.
Yeah. Well, and that's cool too, because I know that for a lot of people, hesitation with a mindfulness practice, and also part of then what really does come up as a challenge with it is dealing with the quote negative thoughts that come up with it, or the thoughts that are just, whoa, it's just me with the thoughts here, and I'm not doing anything about them. I'm just observing them, and putting that out for people, that it can also be, wow, there's so much gratitude coming up for this place that I get to sit in, and how nice this breeze feels through the window, or this, wow, I can really feel how good that meal I just ate was in my body now, and
Yeah,
remembering that part of it.
that, that's really, for me, that was a great discovery. All those nice things going on in there.
I love that description of it too, like potentially for your future stand-up, of like, wow, brain, you got some really positive stuff up there. Like that's pretty cool that you're
I did not expect it, no.
yeah. Well, so I wonder, much like with the conditioning of feelings and, oh, you can only feel these kinds of feelings or in this way, to kind of go all the way back to the circle of like American creativity and law and all of this and American individualism and all of those themes. I also feel like there's this thing that says, in some ways, to expect, like a conditioning that says to expect being unhappy sometimes, or having to work and strive really hard to be happy, and I can see where you have that expectation and where a lot of people have it, or that it would be surprising where it's like, well, wait, if I drop this other, or when I slow down from these other messages, I do feel really happy. Like this is naturally inherently here.
Mm-hmm. I think, well, our country is built on a lot of striving, right? Like the so-called American dream. We're always trying to improve ourselves and get our kids into that better private school, and we increase our income and all of that. It's so built on striving that, of course, that could naturally lead to a lot of unhappiness, because if you're committed and attached to that result and it doesn't happen what you wanted, you could end up being really disappointed. And so I think, especially for Americans, that meditation practice can be very useful culturally, just due to our culture of striving. Um, and right now, because of the kind of havoc that the pandemic is releasing, worldwide, but also in all of our personal lives, and thank goodness for the people who are not touched by it and who are healthy, but we're still touched in some ways, of course, because of isolating ourselves, right? And disrupting all of our routines. And like I said, for me, my routine of exercising by playing competitive sports really gave me a lot of stress relief. So I've begun with my husband to just practice yoga at home. And then we go on walks, I'm just doing different things. And so that's kind of, again, exemplifying the whole change idea. Like, okay, that door of me playing tennis with, my 8 friends, running around the court like crazy, that's not happening. And I love that, and it's amazing, and I do feel the loss of that. But you know what? Now I'm connecting with my husband and doing yoga with him. And I never would have done that before because neither of us had the time, but we're both working from home right now. So we're doing yoga together. And I think that has brought us closer together, and it's enabled me to experience a whole different side of him, which is great. So again, the other door can open, and having some trust that another door will open, all of that helps as far as a coping strategy.
It is. I love that. Like, acceptance is a coping strategy.
Yeah, and it really is, like you're saying, like really accepting it, not just saying in my mind, okay, I accept that happened, but really saying, I feel the loss of my buddies that I used to heckle on the court and chit chat with in between shots, and I feel the loss of that pounding, getting my heartbeat going so quickly, and then feeling like exhausted, and then coming home and having a great night's sleep, but this other door opens, and now it opens up to totally new feelings, which are great too. So
It's true. And like you said, that you wouldn't have experienced otherwise. And
yeah.
I'm curious too, like my head was going to some of my like problem solving mode, head coming out to be like, well, she could probably like call and heckle those friends, or they could do like a virtual thing, or like could tennis is, you could distance playing on the other side of the court, or like how do we navigate through all of these changes right now and also accept, well, wow, now I'm getting to do this thing that I didn't even think of as an option before, that there wasn't the time for it to be an option.
Right.
And
And Annie, I think that this has led a lot of people to be more creative. So I do work with creative people, and I am creative too. And what I love about it is I've seen my clients have this chance to pivot because of the pandemic. And of course, it's trying circumstances. It's a very challenging time to be living. But it really inspires me to see how quickly some of them have been able to adapt and change their businesses and end up thriving. Like I have a restaurant client in Beverly Hills that was able to get a parking lot next door to the restaurant that they turned into an outdoor dining area, and then they do this thing where they make family meals where you can just come and pick up curbside, like a huge, it's an Italian, a northern Italian restaurant, so you can pick up pizza and pasta and caprese salad and all this stuff and take it home. And they send emails out almost every single day, and they've just been a wonderful example of adapting to change that obviously was not wanted by any one of us. But now they're really thriving, and they're continuing to do well. So that's inspiring to me. I also have clients who are inventors. Even though I'm not a patent attorney, I handle trademarks, brand names for them, and I handle drafting contracts. But I have a real estate agent client who's an inventor who's so amazing, and he's been making all these different products to make babies safer and kids safer, protecting them from different kinds of radiation that are in homes. And I think because a lot of people are stuck at home and they have a lot of energy like I do, and they're just, going at it like crazy, just writing down all their ideas and sketches and really making things happen. And in a way, I because I've been finishing up a poetry book I've been trying to write, and I actually got the final illustrations yesterday, so it's exciting.
Whoa, you cut out for a second there on the recording. It looks like I
Oh,
think it's on my end. You came back in when you were saying about a poetry book of yours and you just getting art back for it or
yeah.
drawings back for it.
Yeah, so I was saying that I have used this time during the pandemic to also, finish a poetry book I'm writing and to write a children's book that I've been getting illustrated. And the children's book is about what we've been talking about, which is expressing feelings that might not be pleasant feelings or feelings that people encourage you to express when you're a person or a child, and just how do you deal with those feelings. So I'm trying, to take this moment at this pause that's been sort of forced on all of us, and making some important impact that I value, so that I feel good that I've used this time well to have this pause, and I'm really being useful and trying to give something to other people that I hope that they will find valuable in the form of this children's book, so people can read it to their kids and maybe spawn a discussion about anger or frustration or jealousy.
Yeah, well, it's cool because what I'm hearing is you redirecting a lot of your energies you were already having to do different things and adapting for change, the changing your adaptability and how you change to then redirect that to, okay, well, I know I like being creative, or I know I like moving my body, or I know that these are my values of helping people and how to do these things. And so how do I create and also find and be led to new ways to do that?
Mm-hmm.
It has been that yes and too, where we're, wow, there's so much time to create here, and also, okay, well, we're in a pandemic, so what kind of creativity are you feeling, or how does that impact, or again, how do you acknowledge the truth of the emotional state and the reality of the world right now? And same for you, of like, it was cool too, that parallel of acknowledging, okay, well, the pandemic's happening, I still have this energy, like I still want to move my body, I still want to make things, so what do I do? How do I do that instead?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are going through that right now, like I said, and I think they are directing it in positive ways and coming up with new inventions or pivoting their restaurant business to, cater to people in a different way. And it is inspiring because it shows us how adaptable and flexible we are as human beings.
Totally, which again I feel can be sometimes easy to forget, or part of what a mindfulness and meditation practice can be is remembering, oh yeah, I can bend, I can be flexible here. This can be adaptable, and maybe I'll enjoy this even more, or I'll explore this other thing even more because I was willing to acknowledge the thing that seeking to be acknowledged. Which
And
again, all this stuff is so easy to say, and how to do it, how to be like, oh hey, what's up, anger? You're here.
And I also think, like, I have so many friends that I talk to. I have virtual Zoom happy hours with many couples that my husband and I know. And like one set of friends, they're both attorneys and they've gotten into home brewing and sourdough bread baking and pickling. So they're joking that they're going to start a new business. But I honestly think some people probably will start new businesses after exploring new possibilities during the pandemic that no one would have ever foreseen. And that's also just a wonderful thing, the byproduct of a silver lining.
It's true. And it does give me a lot of faith in humans and humanity and coming together. And when my head will start going these spirals of, but the climate and but these things and basic resource distribution and what are we doing and how are we whatever, to say, we've adapted before. Humans have continually adapted. Another door has continually opened. And also that it can happen faster than we think, that things can change. And like you
Mm-hmm.
were saying, if it could be tomorrow, it really can go that way sometimes. Of,
It
okay, well,
can.
now we're adapting and we have this option.
Something else I'm going to bring up
Please.
momentarily is just that, I'm someone who's always wanted a family, and I don't have a family yet, and that maybe will happen, maybe it'll be in the works. But I realized recently when I was looking at 23andMe, which I did a while ago, that there are all these people out there, who share little strands, sections of my DNA everywhere. They're all over the place. And to me, what greater way to see how connected we all are? We're all connected. But for me, especially somebody who wanted to have a family and still wants to, when I look at that, I think, well, in a way I already do, because we're all related. And literally there are people all over the world who have little sections of DNA in common with me. And if all of us would realize that, I think hopefully we could transcend a lot of partisanship and just really try to look out for one another better.
I love that. I have not gone into that so tangible of really sitting with, look at these little sequences of these codons that are just in all of us here, and that we all will, because happens to everyone. Everyone goes through loss and grieving in different ways, and it can be so easy when we're in it to just say, oh my gosh, this is so intense and I feel this so much, and I'm the only person who's ever felt this, or this is the most intense it's ever been, or oh my gosh, what is this? And well, hold on, it literally in your DNA, human, is this event happening before, and it's in hundreds of other people in that exact sequence that they have it too.
That's a good point about how change can happen and lead to things that make people feel isolated. Like, I'm the only person suffering with this thing. And I think we've all felt that way, like it's sort of like the why me, I'm the only one going through this. Why is this happening to me? But that's why it's important. I think podcasts like yours and sharing our experiences are really important, so that people realize that people of all colors, shapes, sizes, ages go through these things. We all have change that happens that could cause suffering or could lead to something better. But it's happening all the time, and that no one is alone. And, hopefully podcasts like yours can bring some comfort to those people too.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate you saying that, and that definitely is a lot of how I then comfort myself and how I adapt to those changes, and my accepting of that too is to say, well, here's what I can control. Here's what I can do, or where I can direct some of those feelings and that energy. I really see feelings as so much of fuel, and it makes me really happy to know that you, as a lawyer and as someone who's also wearing all of these hats, is like, yeah, humans, we gotta recognize and acknowledge our feelings, because otherwise we're gonna keep hurting each other more than we need to, more than the hurts that happen naturally because of grieving.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
like things are shifting in that way. And so it's that too, to remember and to check in with that change of, okay, well, how much more are people talking about feelings on podcasts? And how much more is it acceptable for people to say, yeah, I'm a poet and a lawyer, and here's all of these parts of me, and I'm a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
But it can happen faster and faster in some ways. I'm reminding myself of that one. I'm reminding myself of that one. There's a lot of, for me, a lot of how to say okay about things for, again, that acceptance.
Well, I think because of the Black Lives Matter movement right now as well, it gives everyone a chance to feel compassion and empathy, for what other groups of people go through. And, although there are a lot of things that are going on with the movement that are hard to watch and can be very upsetting, it's at least a time for us to connect with and stand behind people who are suffering in a way that all of us should be able to relate to on some level. And so I also hope that, during this pandemic, it will be a time where many of us start to see beyond ourselves and see, like I mentioned, how interrelated all of us are, so that we can make changes happen that will accommodate everyone's needs and make a better tomorrow.
Appreciate you bringing that one up too, and also sharing about the personal of your feelings about family and having family, and I'm really feeling that sense of, again, like you brought up that beginning of that dichotomy of change and that what we can control and what we can't, and that stuff within us and without us, and how to have it be both, and how to feel an acceptance of both, of here's me with my story and my unique preferences and interests and desires and strivings and all these things that are great and okay. And also here's the reality of these situations for humanity as a whole, or how my story is just one little piece of all of these other stories that are all fitting together in some ways. Of I'm going through sort of a messy of how to let both be okay, how to say, okay, I support, and I'm here to listen, and I'm here to share, and I'm here to support the Black Lives Matter movement, and that be a voice to say, I'm a human and I'm standing up for how humans ought to be treated. And also then that part, that reflection of, okay, well, so that applies to me too, and my desires for family, or for these other creative projects, or
Yeah, I mean, it really,
because you're saying too, then like, well, so everyone gets to have these. Like that's part of, to me, a just and ethical society is everyone having the time to feel their feelings and to acknowledge it, and to be like, well, what do I really want? What do I really need? What's going on here with me as this one human in it that's also just one human?
yeah. Well, it's definitely something that's going on on an individual level, and then as a society, all of this change, and like how are all of us adapting to it, and how what is that door, that other door that's going to open, from the pandemic and this time that we're going through as a world, suffering together. And I just hope that it leads to greater empathy and a greater comprehension that we are all interconnected.
Totally. I do see it happening. And so then maybe we can sort of close on, or I'd be curious your thoughts and feelings about patience and how that comes up here, to be patient for, okay, I trust another door is going to open. Okay, I trust that humanity is remembering that we're all humans, all connected, and how to be patient with it.
Well, for me, patience is a loaded word. If my husband were in here, he'd say, "Forget about it. She's not patient." um, Patience. So, I think it's more like, I would say the word trust is better. It's almost like your mind might spiral and go to these ideas that, oh no, when is this going to happen? How am I going to make it happen? How can I change this? How, your mind goes through these. At least mine does, and I'm sure many people's minds do. How you can control things. And it's more about knowing that that's what you do, recognizing, oh, this is a pattern of my mind. I do that. And you know what? I do that all the time. And yet, change does happen. And yet, usually another door will open, and something different and sometimes better will occur in my life. So I just have to catch myself. And I've learned to do this through various techniques, but that's what my mind does, I say. And then I realized, oh, I do this all the time. And you know what? All the time, another door will open, and eventually there will be something new that I didn't expect that could be a good thing. And so for me, it's not about the patience as much as it's about recognizing my own patterns in my mind, and then realizing, oh, I've done this before. I do this all the time. And this is what usually happens. And I can trust in that happening.
Ooh, and I'm going again to that thought of yours that comes, that was, oh wow, these are really pleasant thoughts. This is cool. Of, well, wait, I can also go into, for a choice, another C, choose this patterning to say, wow, what if I remember how it feels when that other door opens, or remember that it does happen, or focus on all of these different adaptations people are doing.
Right. And I think at the heart of what I'm talking about is just consciousness, because
The first C.
yeah, and that's what happens with getting in touch with yourself and your own thoughts, is you really become a conscious person if you can do it long enough, over the course of your life. And being a conscious person, it brings a certain amount of calm, and it brings a certain, here it could be other C's, connectedness. It basically enables you to weather change much better.
Weather the weathers.
That is true.
I appreciate you two bringing up, you're like, oh, my husband wouldn't say that I'm patient. And maybe it's one of those things like when people say stubborn and say stubborn bad, and who are we to say patience is good? What if they're both people being determined and passionate?
Passionate, right. I would say passionate. Definitely passionate.
Which is part of how change happens, right? Like change isn't gonna to end on, I guess, the categories you brought up. That other category of that change that comes from within you because you're like, well, hold on, I could feel a different way, or what if I do this other thing?
Mm-hmm.
I don't, in my experience, that hasn't ever come from me feeling neutral, really. Maybe
Exactly.
the action on some, like on some level of like, okay, well, now I'm in a state of not being as attached to it and whatever. Like that feels really bullshitty. I have some intense, passionate feeling, and I'm like, hey, remember when you put your legs up the wall every day and how good you feel? Like, do that.
Yeah. Well, I'm all about the passion and being intense. I mean, that's really my personality. So I'm never suggesting to fight that, but I guess what I'm saying is when it comes to the moments of change where you don't want that change, the acceptance for me doesn't come from patience. It comes from really like connecting to myself and thinking about my feelings and then also feeling my feelings. And that's something that's also important. And a lot of people don't talk about that, but it's thinking about your feelings. So you might feel them like if my stomach hurts. This guy just said something to someone and somehow it upset me and now my stomach hurts. And when you think about your feelings, that's where you build up the mental muscle that you can stop yourself in your tracks if you get into kind of a cycle, a loop of anxiety or something like that, is really thinking about what is that feeling? Why does my stomach hurt now that that guy said that? What is it about that? And then connecting to it. And then the more times you do that and you connect with your feelings in your body and you think about them, the more you're able going forward to anticipate your own wants and your own needs and desires, and how to make yourself feel happy and fulfilled. So for me, that's the consciousness, like thinking deeply about your feelings, becoming conscious of them, and then knowing yourself, being better able to make good decisions in your life. And maybe one of those decisions can be to consciously really exert a lot of energy to try to make a change happen that's really valuable to you.
Mm, very well put and very relevant and needed. And thank you for those words for it of giving thoughts to feelings and going into the questions of it. And
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure to speak with you today, Annie.
yes, your feelings are valid, your thoughts are valid, your humaning is valid. Everyone listening, I'm reminding myself and all of us here. That's all we're all doing is self reminders. This was a pleasure. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing. And I look forward to your poetry book and your children's book.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And I'll put all the things below in the description for people so they can check you out on all the interwebs.
That's great. Thanks, Annie.
Thank you so much for your time.
Bye bye.
Thanks for tuning in and thanks for being you.